My name is Catherine Gorman, and I'm a senior at Tennessee Tech University, earning my Bachelor's of Science in Elementary Education with a minor in English as a Second Language. Today I'm making a video for a class called Foundations of Language for ESOL Teachers. ESOL teachers are teachers that teach English to speakers of other languages. The topic of today's video are phonetics and phonology. Phonetics and phonology are both subfields of linguistics, the study of language. They can be generally described as the study of speech sounds, but they have two different focuses. Phonetics is the study of how speech sounds are produced and what their physical properties are, while phonology is the study of the systems and patterns of speech sounds. If you haven't heard of these words, you've probably heard of phonics. Phonics is a method of teaching that uses phonetics and phonology to teach children how to read and write. Some more words we need to know for this presentation are phoneme. Phonemes are the smallest units of sound in any given language. In the word cat, there are 3 letters and 3 phonemes, k, a, t. In the word fish, there are 4 letters, but still 3 phonemes, f, I, sh, because the S and H blend together to make the sh sound. So, in English, oftentimes phonemes are represented by 1 letter, but they can be represented by more than 1 letter as well. Phonemic awareness is a more specific skill that includes identifying and manipulating phonemes to help decode syllables and words. Phonological awareness is a more broad skill that includes identifying and manipulating units of oral language, like words and syllables. Alright, so we're going to start with phonology. Like we stated in the introduction, phonology is the study of how speech sounds form patterns. There are 2 branches of phonology, segmental and suprasegmental. Segmental phonology looks at the function and possible combinations of sounds within the sound system. Suprasegmental phonology studies stress, rhythm, and intonation as features of speech sounds. Phonetics. Like we have stated, phonetics is the study of how speech sounds are produced and what their physical properties are. This includes the 3 A's. 1. Articulatory phonetics. 2. Auditory phonetics. And 3. Acoustic phonetics. First, articulatory phonetics is how speech sounds are produced. To define how sounds are produced, linguists have created 2 categories, place of articulation and manner of articulation. Place and manner of articulation are also how the International Phonetic Alphabet is categorized. Place of articulation is the point of contact between your tongue and the inside of your mouth that creates obstruction. Manner of articulation is the way the obstruction forms and is released. Manipulating both place and manner of articulation is how we physically produce different sounds. Auditory phonetics studies how we hear and recognize different sounds. Auditory phonetics uses the neuropsychological and anatomical processes in hearing, or how our brain and ears function to understand sounds. And acoustic phonetics, how speech sounds are transmitted. Acoustic phonetics studies the acoustic characteristics of speech, including its physical properties such as frequency, intensity, and duration. Frequency is the time and space between wavelengths created while speaking. Frequency also affects the pitch and speech of sound. Pitch is determined by the frequency of vocal cord vibration, and this frequency is measured in hertz. Intensity refers to the loudness of the sound, and duration refers to the length of time the sound is made. Here I'm going to include a screencast I created with some PowerPoint slides that I will show you to give you visual aid of place and manner of articulation. These pictures really help me to understand the differences between each place and manner of articulation. Hi, so my name is Catherine Gorman, and this is my screencast to demonstrate the place and manner of articulations. So here we have the picture of the 3 domains of phonetics like we talked about, and this first part of this picture is what we're going to be discussing, articulation. Alright, so the first place of articulation is bilabial. Obstruction is created by using the upper and lower lips. Labiodental. The lower lips contact the upper teeth to create the place of obstruction. Dental. The place of obstruction is created when the tip of the tongue touches the upper teeth. Postvelar. Obstruction occurs on the ridge just behind the upper teeth and the tongue moves back about an inch. Palatal. These sounds are articulated when the body of the tongue is raised to the hard palate. Velar. Obstruction occurs when the back of the tongue touches the soft palate at the back of the mouth. Place of articulation, uvular. These sounds are articulated when the back of the tongue touches the uvula. And pharyngeal. These sounds are articulated when the root of the tongue is against the pharynx. Epiglottal. These sounds are articulated when the aryepiglottic fold is against the glottis. And glottal. These sounds are articulated using the glottis. Here we have manner of articulation, plosive. This manner is also referred to as a stop. This happens when there's blockage of the vocal cord and there's no nasal flow. This causes airflow to stop completely. Nasal. Airflow stops in the oral tract but passes through the nasal. Fricative. Friction is continuous at the place of articulation. Affricative. It begins to be fricative. It begins to stop but then turns to fricative. And approximant. Sounds where there is very little obstruction. Thank you. The real-world application of learning about phonetics and phonology. Well, many careers use a knowledge of phonetics and phonology. Linguists, lexicographers, writers, publishers, copy editors, speech and language pathologists, and therapists all require a great knowledge of phonetics and phonology. A basic knowledge of phonetics and phonology would also be helpful in marketing, communications, journalism, law, and IT fields. In addition to career functions, having an understanding of the way we make, process, and categorize sounds can strengthen our understanding of the importance of human communication. Language is a huge part of identity and culture. It connects us to the people we love. The reason I'm making this video is because I want to teach and share language with students who are learning English. Teachers of English to speakers of other languages need to understand phonetics and phonology so they can properly instruct English language learners or emergent bilinguals. Emergent bilinguals come from a variety of language and cultural backgrounds, and they are learning English to be able to communicate. Alright, so now it's time for the best part of the presentation, the classroom application. Phonemic awareness, or the ability to recognize, identify, and manipulate phonemes, is the foundation for reading, spelling, and word recognition skills. Sounds are the building blocks of a language, and without an understanding of English phonological rules and patterns, ESL students are at a distinct disadvantage in the classroom from their native-speaking peers. Here are some considerations I found on Coloring Colorado to make for emergent bilinguals when teaching emergent bilinguals phonemic awareness. Some phonemes may not be present in ELL's native language, and therefore it may be difficult for a student to pronounce and distinguish auditorily, as well as to place into a meaningful context. For ELLs, as well as with all students, it's important that instructions have meaning, so that the words and sounds students are manipulating are familiar. It's therefore necessary for ELLs to have knowledge of the English vocabulary words within which they are to understand phonemes. Teachers can teach phonemic awareness while also explicitly teaching vocabulary words, their meaning, and their pronunciation. Teaching meaning to words, as well as teaching the sounds and how to segment and blend words, gives ELLs context that helps them retain the information. Children's minds are trained to categorize phonemes in their first language, which may conflict with English phonemes. For example, Spanish-speaking children may speak, read, and write ch when sh should be used because in Spanish, these two combinations produce the same phoneme. Teachers can enable phonemic awareness in English for ELLs by understanding the linguistic characteristics of students and understanding their native language, including the phonemes that exist and do not exist in the native language. Scientifically based research suggests that ELLs respond well to meaningful activities such as language games and word walls, especially when the activities are consistent and focus on particular sounds and letters. Songs and poems with their rhythm and repetition are easily memorized and can be used to teach phonemic awareness and print concepts to ELLs. These rhymes exist in every language, and teachers can ask students or their parents to share these culturally relevant and teachable rhymes with the class and build phonemic awareness activities around them. Any activity that gets the student thinking about the sounds they're making and hearing is an activity that strengthens phonemic awareness. Here are several suggestions. Segmenting involves having the students identify individual sounds in a word or syllable. Blending is when the students put those sounds back together. Chunking is using prior knowledge of how letters and sounds are combined, or prior knowledge of phonology, to identify parts of a word we already know. Tapping out sounds involves segmenting and blending to sound out or read through words. Word walls are especially helpful in developing phonetics and phonology amongst emergent bilinguals because they are a physical representation of the words and knowledge that they're scaffolding. Alright, so a few suggestions. There's the clapping game. As students pronounce words, teach them to clap out syllables or specific sounds on which the lesson is focusing. So you can do this while you focus on parts or manners of places or manners of articulation. So you can have the students clap at a stop, clap at a nasal break. Students can also clap out sounds or tap out sounds like the fish and cat examples that I gave earlier. Students can say k, a, t, cat, and f, I, sh, fish. So that's kind of clapping or tapping, same thing. It also helps the students remember those skills that they're learning because they are putting a kinesthetic or physical addition to the learning. Minimal pairs. Give students minimal pairs to practice rhyming sounds. Cat, bat, and frog, blog. So have the students find the rhyme and the onset. The students then are identifying what letters are making what sounds, and they're beginning to make pairs and such. Rhymes. Use rhymes and rhyming literature to teach sounds, like Dr. Seuss. There's so much meaningful children's literature that uses rhymes to build phonemic awareness, and the students love these books. Letter tiles. Give students letter tiles to create words within a specific sound or spelling pattern. Alright, so now I'm going to list some activities, some more activities that I've pulled up. Alright, now some of these suggestions are from readingrockets.org. So this activity is called Listening to Sequences of Sounds. The objective, to develop the memory and attentional abilities for thinking about sequences of sounds and the language for discussing them. So to make this activity interesting, you can use several different types of objects that have distinct sounds, like pouring liquid, ringing a bell, smashing crackers, snapping fingers, cutting with scissors, eating an apple, folding paper, noisy chewing, blowing, writing with a pencil. In this game, the children are challenged to first identify single sounds and then to identify each one of the sequence of sounds. Both will be very important in the language games to come. The children are to cover their eyes with their hands while you make a familiar noise such as closing the door, sneezing, or playing a key on the piano. By listening carefully and without peeking, the children are to identify the noise. Once the children have caught on to the game, make two noises, one after the other. Without peeking, the children are to guess the two sounds in sequence. Alright, so every child should have the opportunity to participate mentally in these games, and it's important to discourage all children from calling out the answers until they're asked to do so. That's important for students that might take a bit longer to think. Everybody just needs to close their eyes, take a moment, identify the sounds, and then when invited, they share the sounds out loud. This also really helps the students begin to develop the skill of sequencing. Okay, this game is called Nonsense, so the objective: to develop the children's ability to attend to differences between what they expect to hear and what they actually hear. So materials needed: a book of familiar stories or poems. This is when it's good to use those rhyming books that the children have already heard and are familiar with. The activity is to invite the children to sit down and close their eyes so that they can concentrate on what they will hear. Then recite or read aloud a familiar story or poem to the children, but once in a while change the words or wording, and you can also change sense to nonsense. The children's challenge is to detect such changes when they occur. When they do, encourage them to explain what was wrong. As the game is replayed in more subtle variations across the year, it will also usefully sharpen the children's awareness of phonology, word syntax, and semantics in language. So this one, the children get so excited when they hear the differences, and you can have them raise their hand or draw or do something on their desk to signify that they know that there's been a swap. And it really helps them to listen to stories that you might have read before. It helps them to be engaged. All right, clapping names. This is kind of what we talked with clapping and tapping out and segmenting. The objective is to introduce the children to the nature of syllables by leading them to clap and count the syllables in their own names. So this is fun for the students. My name is Catherine, so I would clap or tap out k, ath, rin. And you can also, you can do it with phonemes and the sounds, or you can have them tap out syllables. So that's great, and the students always really enjoy it. This other activity called finding things, initial phonemes. So the children being able to recognize onsets is a really valuable skill in phonemic awareness, and this helps that. So the objective: to extend children's awareness of initial phonemes by asking them to compare, contrast, and eventually identify the initial sounds of a variety of words. Materials needed: picture cards. So in this activity, the students look at different words with the same initial phoneme, and then they identify the ending of the words. It says spread a few pictures out in the middle of the circle, then ask the children to find those pictures whose names start with the initial sound on which they've just been working. As each picture is found, the child is to say its name and the initial phoneme. All right, word pairs. Take a sound away. So this helps children to separate or segment the sounds of words from their meanings. Activity is by showing the children that if the initial phoneme of a word is removed, a totally different word may result. This activity further helps children to separate the sounds of words from their meanings. With the children seated in a circle, explain that sometimes when you take a sound away from a word, you end up with a totally different word. In this way, the children are challenged to attend to the initial phonemes of the words, even as they come to realize that the presence or absence of the initial phoneme results in two different words. Across days, gradually work up from the easier initial consonants to harder ones. All right, so these are all just some ideas of games that you can play with students, and activities that help build phonemic awareness, that have them listening to rhymes, segmenting words, separating them, clapping, having those kinesthetic activities, and also blending them back together, practicing, these skills. As we've learned, phonics and phonetics and phonology are really important skills. It is definitely important for us to know as educators so that we can teach children in the classroom how to read, write, and speak in English, and it's important that we also pay attention to how we process and communicate sounds. And just a little review, phonetics is the study of how speech sounds are produced and what their physical properties are. That's all the place and manner of articulation that we looked over. And phonology is the study of systems and patterns of speech sounds. So I have a couple discussion questions that I wanted to present to you guys. And first, thank you for watching this presentation. So, okay, what are some common misconceptions about phonology and phonetics? And what are some activities that you can think of that help emergent bilinguals develop a sense of phonetics, phonology, and phonemic awareness?